What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Chicago Forward, spotlighting leaders and innovators who are making a difference in the city of Chicago. I'm Antwan alongside my co-host, Brian Brady. Brian, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. It's very exciting to be interviewing Neli today.
Yes. And of course, as you said, we have a very special guest with us today. A Safe Haven operates as one of the largest service agencies in the Midwest. Since 1994, A Safe Haven has directly impacted over 100,000 lives annually, serves over 500 men, women, families, youth, veterans, and helping people just break the cycle of poverty while at the same time preserving their pride and restoring purpose to everyone's life. I am 100% excited about this because this person is, along with those 100,000 plus, have been one of the people who've helped me in my life. Co-founder and president of A Safe Haven Foundation, Ms. Neli Vazquez Rowland. Ms. Neli, how are you, my dear?
I am doing great. Thank you so much.
It
is an honor to be here today with you guys. It really is.
No, all the honor goes to us. So the first thing that I wanted to know, I'm always fascinated by the genesis of projects and foundations and how things work. I want to know personally, how did A Safe Haven Foundation start from an idea or concept into what it is today?
Wow, how much time do we have? Everybody has a story, right? And our story is that, in our own lives, we had overcome some personal challenges. And specifically, my husband and I met in college. And it was during a time when he was in the process of addressing a challenge that he personally was facing with substance abuse and alcoholism after having returned from the military. He had some challenges transitioning. So we happened to be friends in college, and, I knew he had a problem, and I just assumed, he just, got carried away, but he really did. He worked at the Board of Trade, and his boss said, he needed to go get help. So he did his research, and he found a treatment program, and it was something that you had to go away for. And I got a chance to be a part of his recovery process, and I learned a lot. And I, first of all, learned that through his process that the idea of addiction and alcoholism was a disease. This is in the 80s. I'm thinking, wait a minute. I grew up in a little village, right? Blocks away from Cook County Jail. And that these people that I knew growing up that faced these challenges actually had a disease and didn't belong in prison or in jail. That was an eye-opener for me. And so we filed it away, that idea, thankfully, fast forward, he gets his life back on track and life is good. And, we get married, we have kids, and we both were fortunate. I was fortunate enough to be able to overcome, some challenges. I'm a first generation American, right? My family of 7, single family breadwinner, my family, raising all these kids in a little village, which is known for being a community that has a lot of gangs, a lot of drugs. And I can attest to the fact that, yeah, we did, So anyway, thankfully, some people stepped into my life that believed in me. And because of them, I actually was able to go to college, right? And it wasn't something that was on my radar at all. And because someone believed in me, they hired me to work in the world of finance, which definitely was, and I was an outlier. I mean, there were no people in the world that I knew that worked in the field of finance. If you didn't have a trust fund or a golden Rolodex, this wasn't something that was traditionally a path for someone like me. So going in, I knew that the odds were stacked against me, and the odds of me succeeding were really, pretty low, so luckily, I found a little bit of a niche for myself and became an expert in emerging markets. And that was something that didn't exist back then. It was before NAFTA. So I learned to start investing in specifically Latin American markets to capitalize on my name, my background, and really make myself, authentic in terms of subject matter expert in the field. Because again, being someone that was identified with being from Latin America, I figured, let me just use this to my advantage, so it worked. And so to make a long story short, I realized that my superpower was really identifying trends early on and figuring out how to be at the right place at the right time so that my investors, can benefit from that. trend. So fast forward, we started having children and we started thinking about the world a little differently. It became a world of where it was more than just being financially successful for us. We had to think about, what is it that we wanted to teach our children in terms of our values. And we were both raised, to those that, with the idea that to those much is given, much is expected. And we wanted to know, personally our values, what would they aligned with the most? And then just assessing our own lives, we were grateful that there were people that came into our lives that believed in us and gave us access to opportunities that normally doors would never have been opened if someone hadn't done that for us, right? So we decided we wanted to do that for others. And specifically what was happening back in 1994, you may recall, that's when the government, federal government started passing laws to really strengthening the length of time for people would serve in prison for substance abuse related issues. And to us, that felt really unjust because we knew that if you didn't know, first of all, that it was a disease, right? You wouldn't know that there's places that existed that provided treatment. And the only path that you would have if you didn't have good health insurance or money to pay for treatment or to hire a good attorney was that you were inevitably going to end up in a criminal justice system. So for us, we felt that this was something that was going to ruin a lot of lives. It was going to ruin a lot of families and ultimately would ruin a lot of communities. So here we are 27 years later. I hate to say I told you so. I really was trying to do something that would provide people with an alternative to think about the fact that if people fall on hard times, that they should be diverted to a place that would actually provide them a safe, healthy place to live, get good food, get a team of professionals that would coordinate the right services for you so that ultimately you can get back on your feet with a job and the ability to support yourself and your family and get your own place to live, right, that you can afford to pay for. So what I felt was missing too at the time was that no one was really thinking about the fact that people that were suffering from these types of issues or were becoming addicted or were becoming homeless had any potential, and I thought it was oppressive to think that the best we can do is provide them a meal at a food pantry or a place to sleep at night without thinking about the fact that, hey, these are people with hidden talents, that all we need to do is to identify them and then develop them and put them on the right path and open doors for them. They're going to help them realize their God-given potential. So that's basically how, and why we started A Safe Haven. What I never thought was back when we started A Safe Haven that I would be here 27 years ago doing this full time, being in a position to help so many people. We help about 5,000 people a year annually today. And today it really is a real vertically integrated ecosystem where by design, we provide people semi-private accommodations, right? Where they have a room here, they have a roommate, maybe two, just like you would in a college dorm, but you're not put out in open congregate space living with a cot, 2 feet away from you. And we do have 3 healthy, nutritious meals that are prepared daily, every day through our culinary arts students that we have here. And we provide access to, again, clinicians, counselors, case managers that their entire job is about helping people, in every way that they can and are experts in to get their lives back on track, whatever it is that they came in with. Some need all the wraparound services. Some need just a few. Some people need none. They just need a place to sleep at night and they can get their own job, So it really is customized to meet the individual and the family's needs. So not only do we help the individual, but we also help their children if they're here. Many people don't realize that children have trauma too, and they need access to clinical care. So for me, it's just a beautiful thing to witness every day that we have families coming in the door that, show up, in situations that, we can just imagine how awful it must have been for them. And, to leave, with a pep in their step and knowing that, the future's bright and they're able now to, completely live, a life with purpose and passion. And what I love to see is, like Antwan, so many people that use their talents and their gifts to give back, and make a difference each in their own way. So now it becomes part of their DNA to think about how not only how their experience, was something that they they had, but today it's actually seen as a gift that they can give to someone else to learn how they too can get their lives back on track.
I have to congratulate you for 27 years, because having
Yeah.
led a nonprofit, it's kind of like times 3. It really is longer than 27 years. It's not an
Yes,
easy
it's like dog
job.
years, right? Every year is like a dog year. 7 years.
People don't realize you have to manage it, but you also have to deal with the board. You have to raise the money. You have to handle the communications. It's a pretty big enterprise, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations. And then hearing your personal story, I think that all great executive directors, I feel like it comes from something really within in their personal story. So hearing your story and your husband's story is fabulous. I'm quick question for you. In that I was laughing that you said Antwan probably remembers 1994, but he was probably 3 years old at the time, so he might not have remembered.
Yeah. Wrote about it.
But
history books.
Thank you, Brian.
I remember though that era too. That it also an unfortunate trend in nonprofits. I was just getting. I think I was working at Association House back then. Was just how much the for-profit industry. Nonprofits were trying to imitate the for-profit industry a lot at that time. And there's wisdom to both the for-profit and the nonprofit sector, and you've lived in both. And so I'd love to hear you talk about, I kind of think it went overboard in the 90s with imitation of the for-profit, but then it kind of has hit an equilibrium now. But what have you taken from your for-profit background, and how has that shaped you, both of those?
Everything happens in divine order, right? Like when I started going into the field of finance and started learning, I loved the process of learning and doing research and understanding different industries, everywhere from the railroad industry to the airline industry to tobacco industry, to food industries. I mean, everything we did was really about trying to understand, the landscape of industries, the competitive situations they face, the economic challenges, the political challenges, and how they affected, individual, companies per se, so that you knew, not to walk into a minefield if laws were changing or economic winds were changing, so just always trying to think, 10 steps ahead. So when we started looking at this industry, it wasn't just the idea of the law passing, that got our attention and concern, for what was going to happen to all these individuals that, didn't see this train wreck coming their way.
Oh, yeah.
But also the fact that, there was a couple of other things that were happening behind the scenes that, only someone in my position would have been able to see. And that was insurance companies. Were canceling. The insurance companies weren't seeing a really good return on their investment of getting people into treatment to be in a treatment program for 28 days, because what was happening was they had a very, very high relapse rate. And, they'd leave, they go back to their original environment. And then guess what? They're facing all the original triggers and challenges. And that is back to their old friends, back to their old community, back to their old, networks, and not being able now, because they probably have burned a lot of bridges, to live with anyone, that would allow them to be under their roof, or to be in a position to even get a job, right? Or even get an apartment, because odds are they probably have something on their record that's going to prevent them from getting a place to live. And you certainly couldn't go into public housing, because you are automatically next if you have a felony in your case, in your background. So, so we knew when they cut the benefits to the 28-day stay, and they were going to reduce them to 1 or 2 detoxes, that it was going to spell disaster for people, and the streets were going to get filled with people that had nowhere else to turn but to the streets, right? So that's how we played it out in terms of really following the money and following where the money was going and where the money was being taken. Where the money was going when it came to the criminal justice, I was reading those laws that were passing, and what they were doing is they were incentivizing states to build more capacity for more prisons and to build more capacity for a bigger criminal justice system, which said what? That means they're planning for failure, right? So instead of really looking at these individuals and saying, how can we invest in them to help them? We're designing a system that's planning for failing them, right? So that, really, really outraged us. And the other thing that was happening, that was kind of a really great model that was starting to emerge, was assisted living for seniors.
Oh, yeah.
So people at the time, the only thing that existed was really senior housing, right? Even memory care, or or senior housing, and then into hospice, right? So that was kind of like the path. So when I was looking at assisted living, I thought, oh my God, that's brilliant, because there's so many seniors that still are pretty much, for the most part, pretty independent. They might need a la carte services. They might need help taking a bath. They might need help with their medications. They might need help, preparing meals. They might need help with housekeeping, right? But as they age, there's this continuum of housing where they go from the most independent form of housing to the most acute kind of housing level of care, right? So Brian and I just brainstorming. We were like, what would happen if we were to create a model of housing that worked in reverse? So we take people at the most acute level of care in terms of their needs, right? These are people that are suffering from substance abuse, unemployment, housing, unsheltered, coming out of prison, having every door closed, with no chance of those doors opening. That was going to be a very high predictor of them, living this way chronically and even generationally. What if we actually took these individuals in the most acute level of care, get them into a setting that was going to give them a safe, clean, healthy place to live, aesthetically pleasing, great accommodations, beautiful landscaping, and change their environment completely, right? And surrounded them with all these experts that are there specifically to design to meet their unique services, and fill those gaps, right? So that, again, not everybody that comes to ASAP even needs substance abuse treatment, but those that do, we got that available. Some need GED classes, some need job training, some need, supportive housing after they leave a safe haven from the transitional housing setting.
Yeah.
Some are able to go into an apartment, so now they're free, to live on their own in affordable housing. And then others need senior housing, and others need veteran-specific housing. So this is how a safe haven started. And since we couldn't get employment for people, we decided, well, shoot, nobody wants to hire them. So we started doing training programs here at A Safe Haven, professional development programs. From like, we're hiring people who better to be employed by A Safe Haven to serve people in crisis than people who they themselves needed services at one point, right? I mean,
Exactly.
talk about the credibility, right? The street cred that would get, but they lack the credentials. So we started providing training programs. So I kind of like remind people, it's like our own McDonald's university, right? So we get people in this program, we get them CEUs, we get them credentialed to work in the field. Now we have people that have gone on and gotten college degrees. And I have to, brag a little bit on some of my leadership team, started out as residents, and now they're managing entire programs today. So
that's amazing. Yeah.
To be able to demonstrate that, all the success, came from just this intention of wanting to help a few people. A lot of people that came to A Safe Haven agreed with the way we do it, right? They didn't want to just give people a handout. They wanted to actually help them get their entire lives back on track. So it's still a work in progress. I don't feel like we're done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we are, for the first time, Antwan and Brian, I do believe that we are, for the first time in history, at a really crucial moment in I've never seen it in our generation, where we actually have the opportunity to influence a paradigm shift in the way our nation addresses and provides a comprehensive delivery system, so that people, whether they're coming out of prison, whether they're coming out of the emergency room, whether they're coming off the street, or they're facing homelessness, and we want to prevent them from hitting the streets and hitting rock bottom, and getting them into a place that by design is going to help them exhale, relax, not worry about rent, not worry about paying any of the bills, all the services that we provide here at A Safe Haven that you could not get anywhere else under one roof, which includes, again, a safe place to live, 3 meals a day, access to multidisciplinary clinicians, educators, workforce experts, job placement individuals, as well as housing placement individuals. I mean, there's nowhere you can go where this is actually provided under one ecosystem. And by design, fosters sustainable success, right? So where we want to be a part of this is we want to really share, about the lessons that we've learned and how we can help influence that paradigm based on a proven track record, and how we can even scale and expand what we're doing, across the city and other communities. Trust me, especially now post-pandemic, we're seeing a huge surge in demand, and we're not seeing a commensurate increase in funding, which is sad to say. So, hopefully, as more people become aware, more corporations become more focused on social responsibility, expanding their social responsibility agendas to address the issue of homelessness, and the opiate epidemic. I found out in the Wall Street Journal recently that the number one reason why people do not want to come back to the office in cities across the country is because of the homeless and the crime situation.
Oh, wow.
Number one reasons.
Wow.
So if I'm sitting in the chair of a corporate CEO's office, I'm going to want to make sure that my corporate social responsibility team is doing something about that issue. Because the good news is there is a model, I'm sure there's other approaches, to homeless, but our approach at A Safe Haven is pretty unique and, has, 27 years of experience in a belt of really helping people, again, heal root causes, get access to services, get them into jobs. We actually own social enterprises that we created. I mentioned hiring people was one way we got people employed. The other way is we have social enterprises that we created that employ people that nobody else wants to hire, right? So these people with barriers to employment have huge talent and have a lot to give. And so we decided, well, we've got let's do a landscaping company, which does Michigan Avenue. You've seen it, I'm sure, the trucks.
I love that.
Yep. We also do a lot of private work that people don't know about, including Starbucks, flower pots. When you see those flower pots, that's a lot of times that's A Safe Haven's team that did that. And then we also have a catering business. So a lot of businesses that are looking to cater their events, we are a go-to agency for that. And then we also are a staffing business. So during the pandemic, we placed almost 2,000 people into jobs, helping these employers fill those manufacturing positions, fill those logistic positions, and positions that clearly they were having a really hard time and continue to have a hard time filling. And now that the restaurants and the hotels are back online, we're a go-to agency for that too, since we train people specifically in some of those fields. So these are exciting times, where I think that there's, like you said, an opportunity so that we're combining the business practices, right, of allocating resources in a way that's getting us the real return on our investment, where we're seeing real return on impact. So we believe that, it's the triple bottom line, right, that they call it. It's like getting the donors, the funders, the investors, the people that help make our work possible, see a return on their investment, right? And then also the individuals that rely on us for help, I want to make sure that we're not letting them down. We're giving them a return on their investment of time, right? I mean, if you're going to give me your time, I'm going to make sure it wasn't wasted, right? You're going to be in a position to utilize every minute of your time while you're here to get your entire life back. And I mean, body, mind, spirit, all of it. And then the idea of financial, right? And then the idea of, the community, right? So we invest in the community. So one of the things I mentioned to you already was the idea that we invest in businesses. So those are businesses that are in communities that are distressed and have been disinvested in for decades. Our businesses provide hundreds of employment opportunities for them, for people in the community and that reside at A Safe Haven, and even those that don't reside at A Safe Haven, we're a resource for. And then also we are investing in communities by building a more capacity for housing. So during the pandemic, I'm really proud to say that we added over 255 units of apartments. Wow. Yep.
That's fabulous. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's not easy to do. Yeah.
No, we didn't sit still. I mean, and it was one of the things that didn't get shut down during the pandemic. I mean, we never got shut down, but a lot of businesses did. So we were really on pins and needles wondering if we were going to be able to break ground on a couple of projects that we already had in the works. And thankfully, we got the green light in April of 2020. And in November of last year, we opened up a 75-unit veteran housing project in Hobart, Indiana. So we've expanded now into Indiana. Yay.
Yeah.
And then we've also opened up a 90-unit veteran housing project right down the street from our headquarters. So we are now full at both facilities. As you can imagine, we get lots of applications for these apartments. And the nice thing about these apartments is they're dedicated specifically for veterans that need some wraparound services ongoing. So they're disabled, they're low income, and they're formerly homeless and veterans that I believe, are a huge priority. I told you before when we started this conversation, my husband was a military veteran, right? So we were definitely understood early on that, our veterans are coming home, and we didn't understand why so many of them were showing up on our doorstep that were ending up homeless after they served. So, we've done a lot to work now. Since 2008, we started working 2010 directly with the VA to make sure that any veterans that show up at the VA hospitals that, are going to be immediately referred to a place, like A Safe Haven, where we can provide them all the services that they need. And in 2012, the VA decided to move into our building. So A Safe Haven's unique in that not only under one roof can you get access to all these services, but you can also get access to the VA, which has an office here at A Safe Haven, which is about 5,000 square feet, where VA professionals are there that are case managers and also can help you get your medical appointments and all your benefits that you may be entitled to and didn't know. So this is definitely a turnkey organization where no one runs around not knowing where to turn. We all know exactly, what direction to point people in and what services that they need and when they need them, because you can't put people into jobs unless they've been, treated for any underlying issues as to why they don't have a job in the first place, right? And get them ready. And it's good for the employers because now they're hiring people that have, really been prepped and are ready to hit the ground running.
I love how you work with the whole person,
Yes.
not just,
Yes.
education. We're trying to get that happening, working with the whole student, but your agency really lives up to its name of the whole individual gets supported. Antwan, I know you had a question.
Yeah, well, I had a comment and then I had a couple, just follow a couple questions together. So first, I would first and foremost say, like, I've got a chance to utilize some of the career building programs that you guys have there. So I can honestly say that, first of all, walking into the facility, all of the employees kind of mirror your same love and sentiment of wanting to care for those, and you feel the warmth the moment you walk into the building and the person at the front desk comes to you and talk to you. So like, for you and that foundation to create that level of comfort while still being able to knowing and understanding that you're there to help people, but provide them a sense of love and unconditional love, and while at the same time allowing them their dignity, because a big part of coming to ask for help is understanding that you're I've been in that situation, so that I can be able to speak on that. But for you to be able to do that for individuals and that organization, everybody kind of mirroring your same sentiments, like, amazing job with that. And I just want to say too, as well, my question would be, like, what legacy do you want to leave, not only with A Safe Haven Foundation here in the city of Chicago, but just throughout the entire world? Because I feel like, I truly feel this, you have created, and A Safe Haven have created a blueprint as to what it means to truly, truly care for someone when they're down and out. Whether they be looking for a job, or whether they be homeless or a veteran, like, for you to have a facility that puts a person in a positive environment to allow them to rehabilitate and mentally, emotionally, physically, like, that's what's missing in the city when it comes to really working with people who may not have it. It just is what it is. So, like,
Right.
my follow-up question with that would be, where do you think a lot of non-for-profits that are in the same arena as you and A Safe Haven, what do you think they dropped the ball? Is it maybe not wanting to help them because of their situation or the funding, or what do you think a lot of non-for-profits dropped the ball there?
Well, I can only speak for a safe haven. I think what again, when we came into this field, we didn't have any preconceived notions. We didn't know really what other organizations were doing. We just knew as we were doing our research that when we looked at the public system, government dollars, right, we were looking at where that money was going. And when we saw that the money was going towards really well-intended programs, such as, welfare, SNAP, or public housing, and again, to address crime, arresting people and strengthening those laws and locking people up in the name of safety of our community, right? I felt that a lot of the decisions that we've made with our public resources were well intended. So when I started asking questions like, where can I find, outcomes, right? Like, how many people did we feed under the public welfare system and SNAP system that actually were able to get access to services that actually led them to independence, right? In public housing, what are we doing to, get them into a place to live temporarily, if they're able to, and opening doors for them to be able to move on and become mainstreamed, right? Instead, what we found was with the incentives went in the other direction, right? It was like, it's about, becoming, in getting in the system and almost, creating, permanent dependence and even generational dependence, because I even grew up with people that were in public housing or public welfare that, were teaching their kids, the next generation, saying, here's how you sign up. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're really smart, and you could be like anything, so I thought, wow, is nobody ever is even thinking about the idea that people actually have huge potential, right? And how do you mine that and develop it and let it realize, as the highest potential they can hit, don't get in their way. So public systems. And then as I was looking at the philanthropic system at the time, they were really looking at it from a very myopic perspective, right? Again, as I described, you can go to a certain place and get a meal. You can go to a certain place, get a place to sleep at night, but it comes 7 a.m, you got to leave, right? Or you can go to this place and get some job training. But if you don't have food and you don't have, place to live, and if you have kids, like, how can anybody ever show up in a job training program, especially if they have a substance abuse issue, right? And again, no services for treatment at the time, because if you ran out of, even if you had benefits, your treatment benefits probably ran out after the first 28-day stay. So anyway, it just seemed like very disjointed, very fragmented. And for me, we just had to look at ourselves and say, you know what, if we can't find anything in the public sector, the private sector, to be honest with you, we were just looking to write a check to somebody, saying, hey, we want to make a donation, to give you fuel to grow, right? But we couldn't find that organization that aligned with our values, where we wanted to look at it from a lens of not what is, but what can be, right? With this individual, our approach was completely different. So personally, we invested in building this for 5 years. We weren't looking to, get any recognition or anything. We were just quietly trying to do this and keep our day jobs. So for 5 years, there was an overlap where, we stayed in our field of finance. That actually was what provided the resources for us to be able to do this give back project. But after 5 years, we realized that so many people were saying, oh my God, if it wasn't for this program, I'd probably be in prison or dead, right? And it was like, oh my God, how do we stop doing this? It just didn't seem like there was ever going to be an exit strategy, so we had to we were at a moment of truth in our lives where we said, we're either going to do our day jobs and just call it a day and close the doors and go back to these properties that we had bought. By the way, they were crack houses. We gutted them. We renovated them. Millions of dollars of our own money. Banks refused to lend to us because they said, look, you don't have a revenue model planned. So we're not going to give money to people that are going to let people live in there for free. And by the way, let people live in there for free that are known drug addicts, right? Or criminals, right? So we had to do this on our own. It was a big undertaking, but we knew that it was the right thing to do for us. So, even our own families questioned our sanity at the time. But after 5 years, we realized that this was a problem that was bigger than us. So I was able to go to Northwestern and get a study done. And they proved to us, not knowing any different, that our model was considered one of the most successful models in the country with over 280% success rate, higher than the national average. So we decided, you know what? We're going to go all in. So we cut ties. We left our careers after 13 years in finance. We're able to go to our state and say, Department of Corrections, so many people that come to A Safe Haven have served time. You let them out. They hit the streets. They relapsed. They ended up, becoming homeless, finding their way to A Safe Haven through word of mouth. We'd like to cut that, path to be a direct resource for IDOC. So when people are leaving the criminal justice system, please refer them directly to A Safe Haven as a step-down program. And that's where in 1999, we designed the very first reentry residential program. So, today it's almost like new and it's almost like news, but it's not new and it's not news to us. This is exactly what we designed back in 1999. I don't believe that we've utilized it as much as we could have, and we should, utilize it more than we are doing right now, because it truly is proven that not only were we able to take people coming out of the criminal justice system, stabilize them on all fronts, get them employed, get them into permanent housing, but we were able to reduce the rate of recidivism back into the prison system dramatically. Usually people, when they come out of prison, within 3 years, they're back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we know through our data is that number is like 50%, right? Or at the time. And when we did our own study on this, looking at the number of people that came out of the system, and we looked 3 years later to find out where they ended up, we had about a 13% rate of recidivism, which is dramatically lower than what we had seen, without services. So, I think that, again, my legacy, you asked, Antwan, is that, my work is not done until we actually are able to really think about what the future of the delivery system is. So we are a blueprint. The only thing missing is really a direct link so that the public can get behind the idea of saying, we have to go with what's proven, what's been, anecdotally proven, and with real stories and examples of what success looks like. And we've got to, solidify that integration system with the criminal justice system in getting people to re-enter and have a soft landing and a place that's going to know what to do, right? Also, with the healthcare system, one of the things that I didn't mention here, and I know we're almost out of time, is that we actually opened up, back and when nobody else wanted to do anything to help address the COVID-19 pandemic back in March of 2020, everybody was running for the hills thinking, oh my God, let's shelter in place. Let's not, put ourselves in harm's way. I approached my board and said, look, I know, people are running scared right now, but my big fear is that there's going to be nowhere for the homeless with COVID-19 to go. So we opened up a medical respite for COVID-19 patients that were, unsheltered, or people that were living in crowded, doubled up situations, to be able to come to get access to healthcare, which was, we partnered with Rush on it. We brought them in as a subcontractor. We also provided all the wraparound services that we offer here at A Safe Haven. And then we also provide a discharge plan for everybody that left the COVID-19 plan. So now we know everything there is to know about them, right? And now, as they were coming out of the COVID-19, physically healed. By the way, we had 1,142 people came through the medical respite during the COVID-19 period. We just closed it March of 31st this year. And we had 100% survival.
That's incredible. That's
huge. These are people that, and the most remarkable thing in the world is that these people checked off every single risk factor: diabetes, poor nutrition, low immune system, all the things, age, all the risk factors you could think of. But they got such good care by the healthcare team and the behavioral healthcare team that they all left with, a plan in terms of where they can go to continue the process of getting their lives back on track. So I can't tell you how many exciting stories we have.
Medical journal needs to study that, Nellie.
I know. I wish we need a university to jump in on this and look anecdotally, look at forensically the data, because, I know one of the things that happened too is that early on, as federal government was sending all the money to the states to deal with the pandemic, they sent money to what they considered, the critical infrastructure. And those were hospitals, healthcare systems, and nursing homes. And guess what? Homeless providers weren't on the list.
Oh, that just shows,
so
much about how we value people who are unhoused, right?
I know. And I was very, very upset because my people were asked to come into work every day. And we were asked to take care of the most vulnerable people, with the highest risk factors. And if we didn't show up to work, these individuals would be on the street. We were the only thing keeping them from being on the street. So I actually wrote a bill. It just passed 100% in the state and the Senate. Thank you very much. It's HB 3949, because I said, you know what, if homeless programs, organizations are not part of the critical infrastructure, then what do I have to do to elevate homeless programs to never be ignored in the future? So we decided that if you, to become part of the critical infrastructure, you had to be defined under the public health ecosystem. So we asked in the bill to elevate homeless programs to become part of public health. You can't say, all these people, right, leaders talk about homelessness as a public health issue. But when it came down to allocating resources, we were nowhere in sight. So I said, okay, you can no longer say homelessness is a public health issue and not back it up with the actual codifying of that fact. So that just passed. The governor has to sign it, but that just passed. I mean, it wasn't perfect. I mean, there were some things that were taken out of it that I really felt should have stayed in. But it's a big, phenomenal, giant step in the right direction. So defining homelessness as a public health issue. Secondly, making sure that our healthcare system, Medicaid, I'm going to give you a little background. So Medicaid, prior to the pandemic, has 3 million people in the state of Illinois. There's 12 million people in the state of Illinois. 3 million of them are on Medicaid. I can only imagine with the pandemic, we've increased those enrollments, right? So 3 million people pre-pandemic. Did you know that 25% or 800,000 of those 3 million have been diagnosed with behavioral health care issues? And chances are they're unstable, right? They're unstable with their housing, unstable with their employment. Obviously, they're on Medicaid, right? So they probably have some pretty serious risk factors. Did you know that they account for 56% of our healthcare Medicaid costs? Because they're the frequent flyers. They're overdosing. They're hitting the emergency room. They have a lot of ripple effects in their bodies, right? From long-term use, whether it's cirrhosis, whether of the liver, right? Or if it's, diabetes, from alcoholism. I mean, the list goes on. And, clearly they're not being compliant with their medications, even if they are prescribed. So we release them from the healthcare system. We put them back on the street where they came from. And then it's just a matter of time before they come back, right? So what I have been advocating for decades, which is why I knew to do the COVID-19 medical respite, was these individuals that are cycling in and out of these emergency rooms, we are not doing justice to them. When you have a healthcare issue and you are not in a position to go home yet because you still have problems walking on your own, you have problems speaking, you have problems eating on your own, you go to a rehab center, right? My mom did that. She got sick. She ended up in a rehab center for a month. And until she was able to, walk and, do what she needs to do on her own, she had to stay there. Physically, we have a system for that. But when it comes to behavioral health care, we didn't. So I said, what we need to do is we need to, now that we have the definition of public health, right? Homelessness being a public health issue. Now we have to help and make sure that individuals that are identified as being behavioral health care, impacted and unsheltered or living in high risk situations are discharged to a place like a safe haven that can help them continue meet their medications needs, their healthcare needs, but also get access to ongoing treatment, recovery services, so that they can learn how to live in recovery, get them their education, their GED classes, their job training, their access to permanent housing, and access to employment. So so we are that link, right? So what we've got to do is we've got to close that gap. And yesterday, the news came out that the pandemic impacted Latino and African-American poverty-stricken populations the most. So our lifespans have gone down dramatically, right, compared to mainstream America. And it's because we are not creating a delivery system that helps us get on the trajectory of getting into employment, getting private health insurance, and getting the things that we need so that we can be healthy from every aspect of that word, right? So this is that's the goal for me.
That's incredible work. That's a legacy, Antwan. That's in those bills and the people impacted. I'm completely motivated and inspired by you, Neli.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I mean, we have written a book, it's called Healing. I would love to just put a shameless plug here. If you want to hear some of the stories of people that have come through our programs, and during the pandemic, I just posted on a Facebook one day and said, hey, I'm looking to sponsor an author to write their story. And I had 12 volunteers right out of the gate. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to say yes to all of you. And instead of making this a book about one person, we're going to make it about all of you. And we ended up turning it into an anthology. So so I got them to work with a writer to help them write their stories. And when I saw the manuscript, I almost fell over. I was in tears just reading these stories of people that literally some of the things that I thought was interesting is that, first of all, they came from every background you can imagine, rich, poor, immigrant, lots of different backgrounds. And each and every one of them, what I thought was interesting too, what they had in common was that they had all been in crisis for more than 10, 20, 30 years.
Wow.
The two longest were 35 and 36 years of living on the streets, addicted to heroin, in and out of prison, serving, almost half a dozen times, if not more. And today, everybody in this book is living the American dream, right? They either own their own business, they are, rising through the corporate ladder. I even have a couple of stories in the book that were alums of A-Safe Haven that still are at A-Safe Haven and are running programs, So
that's awesome.
Anyway, super excited to know, and I'll share with you that we published it in March of 2021. It became a bestseller on Amazon. You can pick it up in any bookstore right now. And Cook County Jail, I got to give them a shout out. I sent them a couple of copies of the book because I said, hey, you might recognize some of the people in this book because they came from Cook County Jail on electronic monitors. And now look at them, So anyway, they love the book so much. They bought almost 500 copies. They handed it out. Yep. They handed it out to the people that are sitting as detainees in jail, and gave them the book to read. And then they invited us to do a book signing and a book talk. So I invited some of the people from the book to come and be on the panel. And it was oh my God, it was so moving to see these people talk and remind, these people that they too were in those shoes of being in the chairs of, being a detainee. And today, some of them were, 10, 15 years later. One guy said, hey, look, he says, I was someone that, literally hit rock bottom. I was living in Vegas. I got thrown out of a window. Every bone in my body was broken. I was shipped back home to Chicago. My family took me in. I had painkillers. As soon as I was able to walk, I was back out on the streets. Did things that led to me being back in jail, got sent to A-Safe Haven after he said he got on his knees asking for answers. He got sent to A-Safe Haven. and he's never looked back. And now 20 years later, he owns his own business, and he owns $1 million home fully paid for.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
So, I mean, it's, every story was different. Every story was really inspiring to me. And I think anybody that reads this book, and I share that book with a lot of people that call me that are struggling with this issue in their families, that feel like, they have no hope, right? Like, and I want them to remind them that, yeah, that's what these people thought too. You got to read these books, and these stories. And my hope is, again, just to kind of change the narrative, reduce the stigma, get people to think, much differently than what we're thinking today. I just finished responding to a questionnaire. Someone asked me a question like, who are some of the entrepreneurs that inspire me, right? And I'm thinking, okay, who are names that people would recognize? And of course, names that I said were Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, right? And the reason I said that is because they were bold enough to think that they actually have the ability to disrupt entrenched systems, right? Who would have imagined, back in the 90s, when Elon Musk was talking about electric cars, that they would become a thing, and also who would have imagined that the way we shop would be completely transformed. So I look at their stories and I think, oh my God, we were on the same wavelength, except I picked the idea of disrupting the way we address poverty and homelessness. So
and all immigrants are children of immigrants too, right?
And by the way,
exactly.
By the way, I believe he just brought Twitter today too. Just not a big thing. Just bought Twitter today. So
yeah, I mean, and the speed he brought that idea to fruition, right? Like he had this idea, within weeks bought 9%, and within 12 days closed on the deal.
I think we got to do another show on Elon though, because I'm not sure. I want to see Elon do a little more social change work in the coming years.
Exactly. Well, recently, if you check their Twitter accounts, every once in a while, they talk about the issue of homelessness. I'm like, they're getting warmer. They're getting warmer.
It's time to make a pitch. Nelly, let's go approach him about a safe haven.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Can you imagine?
Yes, Nelly, before we get out of here, we can't end it without you telling us a little bit about your annual 5K walk, run, bike. Can you tell us how important that is, not only for the community, but just for A Safe Haven to host that every single year? I've had the pleasure of being there as a photographer and videographer a few years back. I absolutely enjoyed it. It's just a sight to see, to have so many wonderful people out there for the community. And then also, too, for people who need the services of A Safe Haven, how can they reach you guys there for the help if they need it?
Right. Well, thank you for reminding me. That's my favorite signature event because everybody can be a part of it, right? So we started doing this back in 2010. As you can remember, the economy was just, really in the dumps back then. And the idea of homelessness was really, really growing because so many people had lost their homes, right? And we were seeing that year, we actually did a survey and found that 56% of the people that were coming to A Safe Haven were becoming homeless for the very first time because they lost their jobs, they lost their homes, and they literally needed a place to start over. So as so many causes, I think at the time, the very first day, the day that we had the run walk, the very first day we had it back in 2010 was September of 2010. Was the next day was the Occupy movement, so, and I thought, wow, if we could harness the idea of the Occupy movement and help people really think about helping people that are homeless, and getting them back on track, I felt that cause had some potential, if they can figure out a way to harness that angst and that frustration with pointing towards solutions. So I see a lot of causes that come up, but the causes get brought up, but the solutions never seem to emerge or be presented. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if and I'm a big believer that running is a big, important piece of my own mental health, right? And science has proven that, when you do exercise, especially, cardiovascular, type exercise, cardio work, that, you elevate your heart rate, that you actually produce new brain cells, right? And you start to feel better, you feel happier, you can learn better. And I know that that's true for me. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun if I combine my passions, right, of running and how that applies to mental health and elevating the cause of homelessness, because everywhere I looked, I never saw a run for homelessness. I always saw runs for ALS, or I saw runs for different causes, Alzheimer's, but never a run for homelessness. I'm like, so why not start a run, walk to end homelessness? So that's when we started doing it back in 2010. And we are going strong. In 2020, we had to convert and pivot it into a virtual run, walk to end homelessness, which really was hard for me to do because it's really it's such a fun, thing to bring so many people. Like I said, anybody can be a part of it. We have elected officials, we have business leaders, we have neighborhoods, friends and family that get together to come on out. And we had people that are in our programs that would volunteer and hand out the water, and they'd see it for themselves. And we even had sponsors that would sponsor teams of people that were living here, to be in the run and walk, especially veterans. So for me, it was like, it's just a great, and you felt it, Antwan, the energy, yes. So we had a pivot in 2020, and we decided to make it a virtual global run, walk to end homelessness. And it really was one of the first run walks because it was still early on, in the pandemic. So I wasn't sure how it would go. And much to my surprise, it ended up becoming the most successful run walk we ever had. Not only did I not have all the expenses of running the event, but we had participants from over 30 states that signed up and 5 countries. So when I was talking to the event planner, and I'm like, wait a minute, if this is virtual, why do I have to limit it to a morning? Why do I have to limit it to a 5K? Why do I have to why can't I just make it a 5K, 10K, half marathon? People can choose. Why can't it make it entire week so people could choose to run on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, morning, night, run every day? Run a 5K a day. It's okay. So we decided that it would give people a lot of flexibility to work in their own schedules and do it each in their own way. And I couldn't believe, how many people across the country signed up, to be a part of it. So we are still doing it for the 3rd year in a row as a virtual this year. But I am getting a lot of calls from people that are saying, when are you going to go back to doing this in person? So maybe we'll do it. Maybe we'll do it as a hybrid. But, I do believe that, the world, as I mentioned to you in the Wall Street Journal, highlighted the fact that the survey showed the reason why people don't want to come back to work is because of the issue of homelessness. They don't want to ride those trains and buses to work, and they don't want to walk past people on their way to the office that are homeless, So if corporations want to get serious and around this issue, I think that their employees would appreciate it. And I think that us, for sure, we would appreciate the partnerships, to make our cities safer and healthier for everyone. And, when you talk about business, Brian, the economics work, right? It's not a zero-sum game. Financially, it benefits every taxpayer. It benefits, every agency. It benefits, people, that, want, to be able to take care of themselves and their families, and in the way that, is going to make them, proud and happy, right? So that is the opportunity that we have right now. So prayers up, that, we got some listeners out there that are watching your show.
We're going to do our part to promote it. That's for sure.
Yes.
Amazing work. Let us, what week is the virtual 5K, have you decided?
Yeah, it's September 18th through the 24th, I believe. But you go to the website, run2endhomelessness.org. All of the proceeds from the run walk go directly to help the homeless. Again, all services are free. and invite a friend, invite your family, invite your, neighbors and coworkers, and invite your company to sponsor it, and be a part of it that way. And I think that the more voices and people we have participating in this event, then the sooner we're going to get to helping more people save lives and get their lives back on track at the end of the day. And believe it or not, I believe that if we're serious about wanting to address violence, you start with really helping people that are in dire situations. I believe that 50% of the crime that's happening out there is due to drug-related issues. So I believe that by doing that, then we are healing and we're creating an ecosystem and communities that works for everybody.
Absolutely. Neli, how can those who need the services of A Safe Haven, how can they reach out to you guys?
They can go to our website, asafehaven.org, and learn everything there is to know about A Safe Haven. You can apply for services online. Unfortunately, I don't say we keep a waiting list, but, there is a lot of pent-up demand for our services. But, please don't give up, keep trying if you don't hear from us right away, but we do try to call people back within 24 hours, business hours. And then you can also call. The phone number is 773-435-8300. Ask for intake. And then coming soon, I told you we closed the COVID-19 medical respite. Coming soon, we're going to be able to open up a behavioral healthcare outpatient center. So we have a wing, that is going to be converted so that we can do more to help people that can still remain in their homes, but may need some services. And we're going to be able to do more to help people after they leave A Safe Haven and may want more services. So it's really exciting to be able to open up another aspect of A Safe Haven. Is going to be about prevention and also about, relapse prevention as well.
Amazing. Apologies for my dog joining the interview in the background.
Oh my God, he made a cameo.
Yes.
You're gonna have to introduce him to us. Yeah, I love
Neli,
Don.
we cannot thank you enough on this very special edition of Chicago Forward. It has been an absolute pleasure, and continue to do the work that you have done. And once again, this show is for us and for me something that I've always wanted to do, is give people their roses, for those who have really made a difference in our community and really choose their life's work in terms of giving back. And you are one of those angels. So thank you so much, not only for the help that you've given me with your program, with the programs, but also just for what you do for the city of Chicago and just trying to improve the entirety of the person, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So you guys continue to do that work. I'm excited, hopefully, whenever the opportunity comes back when you guys do the 5K in person.
We're doing it.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay. And you know what? I'm going to take you up on that because there's some fun things to do virtually too.
I can do it virtually too. I can do it. I think for me, for Brian, for the challenge, we'll be more in person, but I'll be here in person. I'll be here virtually as well.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So for Chicago, for Chicago Forward, our guest today, Neli Vazquez Rowland. For my co-host Brian Brady, been a very great show, guys. Thank you so much, and take time to appreciate the special people in your life. People, we are gone.